on this Wednesday morning, middle of the week. Some damn good basketball games last night. A lot to talk about. Brenden made me aware of something that the Southeastern Conference put out this morning about revenue distribution. The year before, it passed out $743 million. This year, $808 million to the 16 members of the Southeastern Conference. So that was an increase of $65 million.
65.
And that comes out to about $4 million per school. That's significant. Of course, the conference office gets something because they have to pay that lease in downtown Birmingham every year, $1. Compare that to the Pac-12 just 5 years ago was paying $8 million a year to rent in the high rent district of the now third world city of San Francisco.
Hi, Rob. How are you? You hit the ground running, just going out of the driveway 900 miles an hour backwards, Rob. Well, welcome to Sidelines Sports. I'm Brenden Martin, and producer. Rob is just the host and all things knowing of everything sports on this show. Follow us on Twitter. Please click the QR code in our green room. Oakley McFerrin coming in from Auburn, and Johnny Ballpark Franks, one of my favorite guests of all time. He's going to join the program today. And yes, Rob, we're going to talk about that $808 million.
Oakley McFerrin, our intern.
McFerrin, excuse me.
Let me say this. Brenden, I wanted to get that on there because you said make sure people know. But that if you can post that, that's a big deal to get that kind of money. Let's bring in Oakley and Johnny Ballpark Franks from Nashville. Money in this world, Johnny, those revenue numbers, that's big. You can say, well, if we didn't have to split it between two more schools, Oklahoma and Texas, everybody get more money. Well, we probably got more money, but I don't think that's the 23-24. That doesn't even count Texas and OU being in the league. So wait till next year.
Well, Texas and Oklahoma only received $27 million, only $27 million. So they're not getting the full share yet, or 27.5.
Okay.
I don't want to shortchange them the 500,000. Now, if they want to give me the 500,000, I'll be glad to take it. But it is what it is. I'll be interested to see how that progresses and where we stand with that. And I'll be obviously interested in seeing how attendance is impacted over the next 5 years. These next 5 years are keys. In the Southeast, I don't see the issue as big as I see it from the West Coast to the East Coast. I am concerned about those college students, not like us. When I was going to school at Florida State, we loved going to the football games. Basketball, it was in the Metro Conference, but it was a good opportunity to go to off campus because they played in the Tallahassee Leon County Civic Center, and you could drink beer. And every once in a while, FSU would upset somebody. In basketball, they would be like 14-14 and then make a run and make the NCAA tournament. But as far as football is concerned, that is a key, watching to see exactly how attendance is impacted. As we've talked before, COVID back in 2020 got a lot of folks comfortable staying on their couches and watching games from their seats. I've with my YouTube TV, it is so cool to have 4 games going on at the same time. And the best part for me too, as well as I do, I love watching college football. I like taking in as many games as possible. Now I have the luxury of watching any game in 10 minutes as far as the key plays, whether it's 20 key plays or 35 key plays. And that's not just a problem for college athletics. It's a problem for dining. It's a problem for concerts. Folks got used to staying home, working from home. And that's a big challenge moving forward, getting folks back out again as far as the economy, small businesses, and more.
Oakley, speaking of the younger generation, you're a freshman at Auburn. You go to the games, but talk about your immediate peer group, the guys over at the Elks Lodge or whatever.
Now, yeah, I think there's always a special time going to a college football game. You're going to see atmospheres that you've never seen before, but I think you hit it right on the head with the YouTube TV offering 4 different games at once. And for huge college football fans like all of us, you want to take in as much as possible. And COVID really did get people comfortable staying at home. And with packages like that, I mean, that's a big impact on college sports for sure.
Yeah, and Johnny, he went to MBA and is a freshman at Auburn, so he was playing football, high school football during all that time. And you know what? We persevered. That's what we did. But I will say this, going to a lot of football games like I do, the crowds are back, but the tailgating is insane. There's a lot of people that are going to the games to be there and hanging out at the tailgate tent and just getting liquored up and eating all that good food, but they're still jamming inside the stadiums. So that's something we better be very, and Johnny, you nailed it. And I like what Oakley said. You got to remember, why do we go to the games? We got to bond with the teams. And that's critical that we do that. But because the whole thing about showing the games on TV are these massive crowds and all the people inside there. I mean, even when the Raiders are terrible, which they've been a lot, they still love to show their fans in the stands. And, man, they look like the bar scene in the original Star Wars movie.
Hey, by the way, I want to give a shout out. I see George throwing some love to us this morning. Hello, George. It's really strange. I mean, a lot of problems too. And there's a lot of these smaller issues that's becoming a big issue. Name, image, and likeness. I'm concerned. Coaches are concerned to the point now where if they don't change the transfer portal, you see right now, one of the big changes is the fact that coaches don't want to have spring games because they don't want to show Ohio State or USC or Michigan some talented people there that if they don't win starting jobs coming out of the spring, bam, they're gone because, hey, here's Oakley. Oakley, here's $10 million. Come play for us. It's happening. It's illegal, but it's happening. Because, you're not supposed to be tampering like that. But when has that ever stopped any coach? And you know why? It goes back to everything that we've always talked about. And I've asked coaches directly this when I worked in athletics. For me, even if I'm playing tennis against Oakley, where it's a tennis match, it doesn't even matter. If I see my foot went over the line, I'm saying, hey, that's a fault on me. Coaches cheat. And you know why? Because they say everybody else does. And so that's how they justify it in their head. So when they win championships, whether they cheated or not, it doesn't matter to them because they justify it by saying, hey, Rob cheats, Oakley cheats. So it's just part of the game.
Yeah. Oakley, hearing that, let's flip the switch now. Let's look at this SEC basketball season that we're having.
Oh, yeah.
As a fan, and Johnny's a fan, I'm a fan, Brendan's a fan. The Gators came in and put a whipping on Auburn. It was as if Janai Broome and Chad Baker-Mazara really weren't there, although they were physically. They go on the road and get a big win at Mississippi State. Alex Condon gets hurt, but they have got the size, the depth at size and rebounding that is a nightmare for a team like Auburn. Give me your top 5 SEC basketball teams from what you've seen. You go to these games, you watch a lot, and then I'm going to go to Johnny after your answer.
Well, we're dealing with the top country probably in college basketball history, so it's going to be a hard top 5. But I'd say number 1, you're still going to have to keep Auburn. I'll take Alabama at number 2 until maybe this weekend that'll flip-flop.
Yeah.
Florida's a very close number 3. I think those 3 are your top 3 by a decent bit. Just because they can outscore you. They got the size, 3-point shooting, and their guards, most importantly, guards win in March. And then I think you got Tennessee at number 4, and then I think Texas A&M with Wade Taylor would round up the top 5.
Yeah, and Johnny, God, Missouri not mentioned there. That was Dennis Gates is, to me, up for Coach of the Year in the conference after 0-19 last year.
Yeah, and the fact is, I'm not as concerned what happens Saturday, coming up this Saturday with the first of the 2 regular season games with Auburn and Alabama. I think Auburn is the number 1 team right now, no matter what happens on Saturday. Alabama's at home, so you would expect them to win a close game. Alabama is just too inconsistent to the point where, yeah, they're winning games and they've had a great non-conference schedule. I like, as a Bama fan, and the ones that are listening right now too, I would be happy to be number 2 in one poll, number 1 in another at this time of the year, knowing how inconsistent they have been. Remember, they were up big on Arkansas with about 8 minutes to go, and Arkansas came charging back. It was a 1-possession game. That is great learning lessons. Coaches love these kind of things when they're winning games, they're ranked where they are, and they're nowhere near where they should be. And that's perfect because this is not postseason play yet. You want to be able to. I kind of used it on my show on Monday. I talked about, there's fireworks displays all across the country, and then you get the grand finale. And Oakley can relate to this. Nashville takes pride in their 4th of July fireworks as the best in the country. And you know why? Because just when you think it's over with the finale, you have just begun, because that's when they come back and lull you to sleep and then come back with a vengeance, doubling that finale with their really true grand finale, which is the best in the nation. And that's what you want. And I'll be interested to see, like Auburn with, they came back, got it to single digits on Saturday against Florida. But I think there's a chance here where you can peak, have a little bit of lull. And I think the big key is these teams with depth, if they'll be able to come back, peak at the right time, and maybe not even, I don't want you to go, if you're a team, you don't want to go 1 and out as far as in the SEC tournament. You want to have a little bit of you don't have to win the championship. It'd be nice to keep building like that. But at that point, you realize you can't lose again. Remember when Auburn made their Final Four appearance, they were peaking at just the right time, and they parlayed their success in the SEC tournament that year and made their first and only Final Four appearance.
Well, and you remember they had lost to Kentucky on the road in Lexington, KY, by 26 points, and then reeled off 12 straight wins. Oakley, let's throw this at you. For those people that say it's not a bad thing to lose in the first round of the SEC tournament because you get rest, that's kind of like saying in a semester, it's okay if you blow some early tests. You'll still get an A in the end. Not so fast, my foolish friends.
Yeah, I don't think you can lose first round of the SEC tournament if you're truly an elite team, maybe second round. But, I mean, we saw that movie with Auburn with Jabari Smith. They lost number 1 ranked team, lose first round of the SEC tournament, drop to a 2 seed, and then bounce in the second round.
Yeah.
And I will say, too, about first of all, if you're an elite team, you're not going to play in the first round. You may be an elite team and play in the second round because you only get a situation where I'll be really intrigued to see what happens. It's some coaches like, the SEC tournament, it doesn't matter. At least we're playing on a neutral site. Let's just play well. Look, the fact that where we stand starting this week, Oakley and Rob, you talked about it earlier, is the fact that this is historic. If you are following SEC basketball for the first time this year, this is the year. Now, in the 80s, you had Alabama, you had Auburn, you had Dale Browne and LSU, you had Kentucky, you had some really good teams. We're talking about all 16 teams with a chance to make postseason this year. We're talking about 13, probably maybe 12, but 13 is a possibility, even 14 teams as far as in March Madness. But then the other two, if they finish strong, like South Carolina, I don't expect them to go winless in the SEC. So if you can just have a little bit of success down the stretch, those last 2 teams, or last 3, depending on how many get into the NCAA tournament, can get in the NIT tournament. So we've never seen this before. As far as not just the SEC, we've never seen this before in college basketball.
Yeah. Well, 2011, Oakley, was the year. 11 teams from the Big East made it to the tournament. And you talked something a second ago, Oakley, about guard play. Jim Larrañaga at Miami, a month ago said, I've had enough of this crap. I'm out. He started 4 guards, remember, just a few years ago, and beat Auburn by about 20. You're right. The tournament's about guard play. You don't find better guard play anywhere in America than you do in those Big East schools, those gym rats that play up in the streets in Brooklyn and the Bronx, that street ball. Those are the best. Oakley, Kentucky loses a lot. They're 6-5, yet they keep climbing up in the rankings. There's no bias toward brands in sports, are there?
Yeah. I mean, they got a statement win last night, finishing the sweep versus Tennessee, and
yeah,
they're another team that I think you can look out for Kentucky because they're shooters.
Yeah.
And if you can shoot, you're going to belong in any game. But they've got Lamont Butler, Kobe Bryant, Otega Owe. I mean, they've got some real players. But when are you going to have the 15th ranked team be 8th in your conference? When does that happen?
Yeah. And what's crazy is, just as I was kind of messing with Kentucky, because they are the program that has put the SEC out there forever. Now everybody else is pushing basketball, and I can tell you this, everybody's going to have a case of the tight ass from Auburn when they go to Lexington to play them later this season. It's the way it is. Johnny, it's almost like a Hollywood script. Kentucky can be struggling, but when they've got to get a win, it just happens.
Yeah, it's really tough to be struggling and still be ranked 18th in the country. With that win last night, they're now 7-2 overall against top 25 teams. They're 5-1, an 83% winning percentage against teams in the top 10. So here they are struggling with their 7 losses.
Yeah. And
there's a reason why they keep rising in the polls, because tell me another team nationally that can match those kind of stats. That's not getting love. So yes, I understand the bias, just like you have the teams in football the same way, but that bias this year for Kentucky is deserving of where they stand right now. I mean, they had a huge win earlier this year against Gonzaga. So yeah, they deserve to be where they are.
Johnny, I agree. And Oakley, I'm kidding about it, but when Rick Pitino was there, I think they got in with a 16-12 record. I remember, and I think the world was shocked. But one thing about Kentucky, they can fill up Nashville. Auburn can fill up Nashville. Alabama can fill up Nashville. Tennessee can fill up Nashville. I remember when they used to play the SEC tournament, guys, at the Memphis at the Pyramid, and Arkansas and Kentucky. My God, Arkansas can fill up Memphis when they want to. Oakley, I know you've got the rigors of academia. You've got class coming up. He never misses class, Johnny. 3.7 his first semester. I'm very proud of you. Tell us, before you go.
But is he developing a personality with his social skills? Because I'm going to say right now, I graduated 14th in a class of 502 in high school. My master's, my MBA, graduated with honors of 3.8. Florida State, that's where I majored in having a chance to have a social life, personality. When I was there 2 out of the 3 years, we were the #1 party school in the country. And so the graduating with honors was a 3.0, but I made up for it but I will never regret the fun I had at Florida State. And I don't know about how they test you, Oakley. I hated the way they tested at Florida State. You had a midterm and a final. So from August to the first week of December, 2 chances to be tested. And so many times I would walk into a final with an A and end up with a B or a C. So, but I will not regret it. But hey, more power to you. Just make sure you make those contacts. Shake a lot of hands. Rob Rob in your class may not be like, hey, he's going to be. That same guy that you will dismiss will be somebody that could be possibly hiring you, or say, hey, I know a great guy from Auburn. Oakley deserves to have an opportunity to work for my company.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that, Oakley. And Ronnie Sanders said he'd love to talk to you. We're doing the show with him, AU Undercover. So a lot of opportunities. And you know what, Oakley, that's the thing, man, consistency. All right, John, let's give him an assignment for next week. You got pen and paper handy, Oakley?
I've got my notes app. Got my notes app.
And my notes there. All right, let's think of an assignment on for next week, Johnny, on a famous player in the SEC. Just think of somebody, and Oakley kind of get some information on him for next week, because I love the history, the traditions, and the heroes. Just from anywhere in the SEC, famous basketball player. Maybe people don't know about that they need to.
Let's give him. How about this? Should we give him an Alabama guy since he's an Auburn guy?
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of connections to Tuscaloosa.
I'll tell you what. Let's give him a coach, because right now what Nate Oates is doing at Alabama has been really tremendous. And by the way, everybody I talked to on my show, even Alabama players from the past, all will credit Bruce Pearl and Auburn with what's happening in the SEC. It's certainly a reason why Alabama upped their game. It's a reason why Alabama's having success, because before Bruce Pearl took Auburn to a Final Four, it's like, yeah, it's great. Sweet 16, that's perfect. But when Auburn raised that bar up, it has now put pressure on all these other schools, especially in Tuscaloosa. But I'm not going to ask you to do Nate Oates. I'm going to ask you to do something on Wimp Sanderson.
Yeah.
Wimp Sanderson, where Sweet 16 was just it got to the point where, now people would love to be in the Sweet 16 every year. Yeah. The Elite Eight, Final Four, great. Sweet 16. Wimp Sanderson got to the point where, with Alabama fans, it was just taken for granted they were going to be there. That's how successful Wimp Sanderson was. So Wimp Sanderson, and in part B on that, what is he known for most when he was coaching games?
Yeah, that'll be
yes, sir.
Oakley, that'll be.
How do you see the sir? Now I feel weird, the sir part, but I appreciate it, Oakley.
Oakley, what's your preferred social media platform?
Instagram at Oakley.McFerrin.
Gotcha. Oakley, look, go kick butt.
That's a good question, by the way, because I'm so confused now which direction. I'm not the big Instagram guy. I'm coming up strong now. I hate X/Twitter. As far as the misinformation that's out there, sports, you name it. So I'm kind of lost there, Oakley. Maybe Oakley could do something on that too, because I think Oakley is ambitious. So maybe the social media part, as far as how to get your sports message out there, that could be a key too.
And Oakley, look, next week, tell us where the younger generation, just kind of throw some stuff out there for next week, where they're getting their information, how they consume their information. Okay, that'll be cool. Look, I know you got to get going. We started a little bit late today, but love having you on here. Look forward to next week. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on.
You bet.
Nice
always.
Hey, and I'll say War Eagle to him too. How about that? War Eagle. Although I grew up a Bama fan, my wife is an Auburn fan, but I'll say War Eagle to you, Oakley.
War
down. All right. Let me tell you something, man. I love that. Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson from Florence, Alabama. Brenden Martin he was there. He was wearing a muscle T-shirt this morning. He's 6'4", 212 pounds of iron.
It's because I don't have time to change, Rob, my workout.
Don't you have to have muscles?
He is.
Dude, I'm stacked, bro. I don't know.
He'd be like that. That's a first down, I guess.
Yeah. Who was that ref? Remember the ref a couple of years ago? They called him Guns.
His son, isn't his son Ed Oakley?
Yeah, he went and got a career in modeling.
Yeah. And he had those up here. It could be 30 degrees in the short sleeve shirts.
He'd be wearing it. Let me say something real quick about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors. And then we're going to bring in Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal in just a minute. But they're open every day of the week. And any of the shooting sports that you love, duck hunting, deer hunting, quail, they've got all the stuff that you need, the gear. They have everything Sitka makes, duck camp, Dixie decoys. They've got deer stands. They've got food for your deer plots. If you want the gear, they've got it. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns in a secure location. They got a competent, well-trained staff. A couple of things. They're growing. Got a store under construction in Auburn now, opens in June. And they will also they're about to announce something about the Memphis market, a store in the Memphis market. They're looking at Athens, Georgia, Fayetteville. If you live in the SEC footprint, look for a Winter Timber Outdoor store to come soon near you. Johnny, I got to tell you, you've got a producer and I got a producer. Mm-hmm. Brendan's ability to generate all these graphics and all, blows my mind. And I thought I saw Kentucky had I don't know where they're ranked now. Brenden, they're 16. They got 7 losses, but you're right, 7-2 against that schedule. When it's a big game, Kentucky just they show up. And
they're
Mark
15th, by the way, in the AP poll, 18th in the coaches poll.
Okay. They had been 9th when Vanderbilt beat them. And speaking of Vanderbilt, God, the magic is back at Memorial Gymnasium. Obviously, they didn't beat Auburn last night. Auburn had a lot of fans there too. But, Bryce Drew, Johnny, you grew up, and Nashville. Bryce Drew led them to their first ever losing season at Memorial Gymnasium. And that's a house of horrors for a lot of schools. And I look at these rankings. Auburn, Alabama, Florida. Wow. Duke, Tennessee, Houston, Purdue, A&M, Rick Pitino, by the way. What can you say? Iowa State, Michigan State, Tom Izzo. He's just always there. Texas Tech, Arizona, Penny in Memphis, 15 Kentucky. Wow. The Fighting Chris Beards of Ole Miss, Mississippi State at 22. Mississippi State seems to be going the wrong direction. I think Chris Jans is a really good coach, but I want to focus on these top 3, Auburn, Alabama, and Florida. Johnny,
let that sink in. Both Tennessee in there in the coaches poll, because in the coaches poll, Tennessee is right there as well. Now, they did lose last night, but think about it: 350, Division I teams, and the fact that Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee so close together, though in Gainesville and though in Florida, but especially those 3. The fact that of all the teams playing Division I college basketball, you have 3 that close. And then they're all top in the top 4. Now, Tennessee, depending on what happens this weekend, they could drop 1 or 2 notches. But Tennessee has proven to be a Final Four possibility. Florida is certainly in that conversation. But this, like I said, this is historic. The fact that the top 2 from the same state, like in the SEC, this is just an amazing thing to watch. And I think you'll see it in the stretch run with all these attendance, too. And what about you, Brenden? What do you think?
I'm always like a wait and see guy, because I always think about the year before. And last year we were touting the SEC as the greatest basketballs, ever in the SEC, and then it was
epic, historic, all those things.
And I see things like,
Alabama made their first Final Four appearance. It was.
I know, but then I think like the Rick Pitinos of the world let us get real excited early, and then they just start showing up at the end. Well, I think that's what happens, and that's why we see Kentucky, and that's why we see these, the repeat of these teams, and that we see every year, the Dukes, all of this stuff. That's why I say don't get too excited too early.
All right, here's the thing.
It changes quick.
Florida, Kentucky, any of these teams you're throwing out there, do they play their college basketball games at home in their, say, an indoor football stadium? They don't. And so if you're relying on 3-point shooting, for example, you have to adjust your offensive game, because I remember like when it was held down in St. Pete, and that thing wasn't even designed for baseball. I mean, that thing they play in is just a monstrosity. But here's the problem. And everybody, the fans watching, say, I can't understand why they're shooting so poorly from 3-point range. They've been a hot 3-point shooting team all year long. If you get out on that court and you see what your background is behind the goal, I mean, it's tough to be able to all of a sudden shoot. That's why teams struggle. Watch even in the SEC tournament, teams that play early, sometimes the teams that win, they can get on a run because they're already in tournament mode, but they've already adjusted to the arena. But it is so tough if you rely on your outside shooting and to shoot in those type of environments. That's why a lot of times you have very poor, especially in first half of games. And that's, something to watch out for. And that's a problem, not just for the SEC. That's a problem for any team, depending on where they're playing these. I wish they would play in true basketball. I know that they lose fans, but I remember like when a national title game played in the pit out in Albuquerque.
Oh, I've been to the pit.
And that times. Me too. We played there when I was at Tennessee State. And see, that to me is perfect. Now I understand it limits the fans that want to get in. I'm sorry. These games should be played. A true national champion, you should be able to win games in a real arena that's designed for basketball. These football stadiums are not designed to be playing basketball games.
They're not designed for it. You remember that Saturday Night Live skit with Kevin Nealon, Mr. No Depth Perception, the characters, and the guy was trying to back the truck in and came through the kitchen window, and that people don't realize when you get in these big arenas how far away everything is. When Auburn went to the Final Four at the arena in Minneapolis, 72,000 people were there for a basketball game. And it takes you just have to deal with what you got to deal with. But Johnny, you're right. They also have had the game in Lexington, KY before at Rupp Arena. And they've had it at a few other smaller places. And I agree with what Brenden just said. And we're going to bring in Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal in Knoxville. But Rick Pitino, these Big East coaches, they're kind of like, baiting you in. And, man, when it gets to the tournament, Brendan's right. Last year, there were terms thrown around randomly and rather loosely, like epic and historic. When talking about the SEC, Florida goes out in the first round to Colorado, a real power in basketball. Auburn knocked out by Browne's Business College, Yale. It was awful. Alabama did get to the Final Four the year, and I think people were sort of surprised because they thought the year before that they would go, but they didn't. So, Vince Ferrara, how are you this morning? Glad to have you. We're talking a lot about, obviously, SEC basketball in this season. And Tennessee, one thing for sure, Tennessee's can play some damn defense, but they lost to Kentucky. But Tennessee's beaten Kentucky 82 times, which is more than anybody in college basketball. Talk about the Vols and how you see them in and out the season.
Yeah, but recently, great to be on with you guys. Recently, it's been Kentucky twice this year. Kentucky's one in Knoxville, and then one last night. And Tennessee had breakdowns defensively, and they didn't make shots. And Kentucky shot 50% from three-point range for both games. They were 12 of 14 in the first meeting in Knoxville, and they were 12 of 14 last night. 50% from three-point range, going to win you a fair amount of games. Now, Rick Barnes in the postgame said he didn't think it came down to the three-point shot, that they allowed too many backdoor cuts and, drives into the lane, and guys that, weren't their top-level starters being able to, score points and make plays. Tennessee just was, they didn't close strong at all. The final 4:30, Kentucky closed out 17-4. Tennessee had actually taken the lead when it was such a grind for them the entire game. And Kentucky closed. They made their threes. They had guys off the bench that, had not contributed much that made threes. They had 6 different guys make at least a three. Tennessee had one player that made a three-pointer, and that was Igor Milicic, who made 3. So he's been really good in both games. Problem is they just haven't had enough scoring. Chaz Lanier has only combined for 29 points and 30% shooting, 18% three-point shooting in the 2 games. The three-point line has not worked out. And Tennessee's the best three-point defensive team in the country. It's just Kentucky packs the paint and prevents Tennessee and dares Tennessee to shoot threes. Tennessee was more willing to try to get 2s last night than chasing the 3 ball, but they weren't making shots, and they're not a great three-point shooting team. And on the flip side, they're always so confident and prolific in shooting the threes that they made a bunch of them, and even beyond the three-point line, extended out. So Tennessee is usually can fall back on their defense, but not able to. This team, it will go as far as their offensive consistency will take them. And, they had really played well offensively the last 3 games, but Kentucky's been a bad matchup for them this year.
Yeah. Johnny, talking about that, Tennessee plays great defense, and defense travels in football and basketball because it's the one thing you can control. what Vince just said, Tennessee will go as far as their offensive consistency will allow them to go. They beat Florida a week ago Saturday with only 7 scholarship players and Sakai Ziegler out of that game. You're in Nashville. Vince is in Knoxville, and he's part of the Vol network on a lot of the stuff, knows that program really well. How do you see Tennessee? They're always there with Rick Barnes, and they're always going to be.
Well, I think Vince hit the nail on the head, and you could take out Tennessee, leave it blank, and insert these top 12 or 13 teams that have possibilities to make the NCAA tournament from the SEC. We saw it, like I said, on Saturday with Alabama with the big lead, and they're having problems finishing games. It's a nice problem to have now, Vince, in the sense that you can still correct these things. And the coaches love it that you're getting W's. Now, certainly Tennessee, with the loss, that's frustrating for them, but does it really matter right now? No. However, the consistency issue is going to be, it's not just even missing a shot. The consistency that these coaches want to see is the defense that they're capable of playing. Yeah. And that's why Mark Sears earlier this year, a guy that's not just up for SEC Player of the Year, up for the National Player of the Year, he got benched in the second half of a game, mainly because you want better decisions as far as shot selection. You want effort on defense. There's no excuse for lack of effort. Now, you may have a cold shooting night if you're on the road, but your defensive play, no matter as a team and as a unit, that's the part where coaches just get crazy on, is the fact that, defense should never take a night off, because that's all effort.
Yeah. Vince, along those lines, you see a lot of basketball. Tennessee, that's pretty unusual. 8 scholarship players healthy right now. Is that kind of talk about the health of this team? And you go back to that offensive consistency. 1 guy had a 3-pointer, 6 did it for Kentucky. Yeah, and listen, there's no perfect team out there.
Yeah, 9 scholarship players that are healthy right now. 8 played in the game really for Tennessee in the second meeting. Bishop Boswell is the 9th, the true freshman. So it's still, normally that's what you want in terms of your rotation, 8 or 9, and then you have others that you can bring in if necessary. That's all of their options, and they've been getting outscored. Their bench has by a number of teams. Jordan Gainey is a potential difference maker off the bench. He played 32 minutes last night, 8 points. He can be their 3rd leading scorer. I mean, he's had games where he's been their leading scorer. He's that good, but he had some defensive breakdowns last night and just hasn't been able to be consistent over the last few games. They need another scoring option and can't have it always be Sakai Ziegler bailing them out. That happens too often. The guy has to do so much for that team, heart and soul, and leading and defense and penetrating and making tough shots at the rim and passing, all those things. And then you need him to be one of your top scorers too, and he ended up being their leading scorer last night. I mean, that's going to take a toll on you down the road, even though seemingly he never gets tired. They need Igor Milicic he's their best option for their number 2 scorer. Chaz Lanier is the one that I think can elevate them into another level offensively. And again, he had been improved over this winning streak, not so much, in the second meeting with Kentucky. So, yes, the defense is where you want them to always be consistent. And it's strange to see them have defensive breakdowns. But, I mean, that's 2 games against Kentucky where they give it up, 50% 3-point shots. But again, against other teams, they do a great job at it. So this, like everybody's got issues. Even Alabama, who was as efficient offensively last night against Texas as you can imagine, the one thing is the turnovers. And Tennessee's had that at times too, where they're making all their shots. They were amazing against Oklahoma last game on the road and just routing the Sooners and shooting, making 14 of the first 16. So this team is capable of it. But they at times just have those letdowns. The best teams, though, have ways to kind of get you out of those tough moments. Auburn, I think, has the best answer to rough stretches when they can just get it to Janai Broome and he can break either offensive slumps or runs from the opponent because he can score so frequently from so many different areas.
Well, there's two things that scare the hell out of me if I'm a coach in the SEC. That's the 4 big guys healthy at Florida and Walter Clayton Jr. when he's on, because that guy's a badass. But Tennessee lost by 30 January 7th down at the O-Dome, but then beat them by 20 with 7 scholarship players. I got to say, pound for pound, the best basketball player, not just in the SEC, but in America, is Zakai Ziegler. For what he does, what he has to do in terms of carrying Tennessee. And Vince, I know when you lived in Tuscaloosa, if you're like me, and I've been to Tuscaloosa a lot, you've probably been to Taco Casa before.
Yeah,
I love the Casa.
That transition right there.
I'm just saying, those Alabama fans, it's going to be insane when Auburn and Alabama meet on the IBOB, as Kevin Skarbinski calls it. I have to give credit where it's due, but I think Zakai Ziegler, his story about riding the train, an hour and a half, 2 hours each way to school every day up in New York to go to school. I don't know the kid, but he'd be someone whose autograph and framed picture I would put up on the set of this show if you could get it for me. I'm just saying, Vince, I would put it on the set if you do that for me.
Absolutely. He is special.
I love it.
So it's an official request for an autograph to guys like, I got you.
I really mean it, because I watched that guy. He's not real big, but he's got a heart. If every player, I heard a coach say, my dream is when my number ones work as hard and practice as hard as my 2s and 3s. Zakai Ziegler is in the book. He is what a basketball player and a kid ought to be. Johnny?
That's funny, because I remember when I worked at Tennessee State, we had a player that was, I won't say his name, he was 7 foot, and he would get 12 or 13 scouts every game. And he was just, I don't know if he was even average. He was probably a little bit below average. And it's like, if he would just work for just 2 months work, he was going to be a first-round draft pick just because of his size. And it was like these scouts wanting him and trying to will him to put in that kind of effort. And it just couldn't quite get there. He couldn't do it. And that's a great point you made about second. Look, I think that Tennessee would be a concern for me as far as how deep they can go in March Madness, mainly because they can't have more than 2 players be slumping on a given night. Give me teams that have depth. And I think that's a big key, especially as we continue with SEC play before going into the SEC tournament, for coaches to find, see if they can develop one more player. 2 if it'd be perfect, but if they can just develop one more player for their bench, because you're going to need that. Because what do we see? You're not accustomed to some of these officials that you encounter in these neutral site games as far as March Madness is concerned. And so because of it, you don't know if your top player or top 2 players could all of a sudden both have 2 fouls and there's still 16 or 15 minutes to go in the first half and they have to sit. So I think developing depth, that's why Alabama, to me, when you have so many players that can contribute, that is where you want to be. Otherwise, if you're only, say, playing 8 guys or 7 guys that you can count on, that is a concern when you have sometimes you get some bad officiating and you have to sit. And if a player had pulled a hamstring, you talk about Auburn losing to Yale last year. They were out without a key player there. I mean, that is very significant, whether you're playing Yale or Northern Kentucky or Grand Canyon. Remember, yes, Alabama made it to the Final Four, but 6.5 minutes to go in that game against Grand Canyon, they easily could have lost that game in the second round.
Well, Johnny, I'll say this. Your point is good about the depth. I agree with it. I think the officiating aspect of it plays a bigger role in helping a team if you do get in foul trouble in the NCAA tournament more than maybe momentum and how you play. because it's so much about matchup game to game. Tennessee is a perfect example. Well, they'll shoot lights out, they'll play a great game. Oh, now they have to face Zach Edey, which is a completely different story. And he's so tough to play against, for anybody. And it's so game to game, so much about matchups. So I think you can, play your way in or out of a slump or hot shooting, but having answers, that's what you need in the NCAA tournament. That's where the depth can come into play. Okay, somebody's in foul trouble. Somebody turns an ankle. They just went on an 8-0 run against you.
Yeah.
What is your response? You have answers. And the teams that have the depth and have those clutch players, they have answers, because not every NCAA tournament game is going to go as planned. You got to figure it out. And sometimes you're in a grind against someone you're not supposed to. And what is your answer? What's your plan? Can you execute? That's why the end of games and working through that depth and getting guys experience sets you up for when the NCAA tournament comes. You've had guys that the moment isn't brand new for them. They've had some experience of trying to figure it out. So, yeah, one single result, I think, Johnny, you mentioned it earlier, one single result right now, nobody's going to remember in the NCAA tournament, but do you use it to make you better in those key moments when it matters?
Yeah. The other thing, too, I don't know if most fans aren't aware of this part. I guarantee you that these teams, the ones that really expect to be in the NCAA tournament, even the one in, the conferences that only get one team representing them, they're already scouting matchups. They're already looking to see, okay, if you're, say, from the Ohio Valley Conference, we're going to be probably a 16, 15, 14. You're already looking at who you're possibly going to play. If you're in Alabama or Auburn or any of these other, or Tennessee, you're already not just your first game you're playing, you're already looking at video and looking at the matchups you're talking about. They're not waiting until, okay, we just won, so in 2 days we're playing Team A. They're already doing these things now and trying to figure out ways how they can match up and ways to beat them now. And oh, by the way, let's see if we can win this game coming up on Saturday also.
Yeah, well, go back to what Brenden said. One of the best takeaways of the show this morning when he talked about Rick Pitino and those Big East coaches. You can't beat these guys like back in the day, Rolly Massimino, PJ Carlissimo, Luke Carnesecca, and the Sweaters. I mean, I was religiously with fervor watching Big Monday, Big East basketball growing up, and Jim Boeheim. And when they played at the Garden, it was about the damn guards. And then when the guy from Rindge and Latin School in Cambridge, Mass., Patrick Ewing, came to Georgetown, I started following Georgetown in 78, 79. You throw in guard play with a guy like Patrick Ewing, Brendan's right. They will lull you to sleep, and you get into these tournament games, and they play street ball. That's why Zakai Ziegler is such an advantage for Tennessee. You go back to Dr. Ed Weiner, who was a dentist who passed away about 4.5 years ago in Memphis, was in Tennessee's Hall of Fame for basketball. And he told me the story. It was really cool on this show. He said, Rob, I used to see him at work every day. He would take his whole staff downstairs and he'd go, you hang in there for my buddy Bruce Pearl. He's going to make great things happen at Auburn. Just give him another year or two. Don't give up on him. And he was right. But he said he got a call from Ray Mears, the Tennessee basketball coach, when they were recruiting a guy named Ernie Grunfeld from up in New York. And his parents were Jewish from Romania. So he called me up at 3 a.m. and said, I got a big favor for you, Doc. He goes, what's that? He goes, you speak Yiddish, don't you? He goes, yeah. He goes, you got to help me talk to Ernie Grunfeld. So he convinced him to come to Knoxville for the visit. And the Ernie and Bernie show happened because of Dr. Ed Weiner. And he was Tennessee's basketball representative at the SEC tournament in Atlanta just a few years ago before he died. But I just think about tough street ball. Give me those kids. Kenny Smith, think about Dean Smith in North Carolina, made a living out of getting kids out of the Bronx and places like Hell's Kitchen, New York. Y'all are all right. You get in this tournament and everything's different. You got a bunch of guys at a small Catholic university that have been playing together for 3 or 4 years. They're a nightmare. They're your worst nightmare in the tournament. Brendan's right. It's not that you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's just, fight with intrepidity. Wow.
Well, no, you got it.
Wait, I had to get my dictionary out first. So I can share with these big words.
I had the thesaurus
holy
going.
Cow.
I had ChatGPT's broken now, Rob.
Hey, by the way, you're throwing out these names. Can I just share a moment? So when you're in these official capacities, whether you're covering games, I remember that right before our second appearance, we were playing Kentucky in the NCAA tournament, and our athletics director just left to take the AD and head coaching job at Texas Southern. So I get named acting AD. So with that, before these little tournaments start, because you have the big tournament, but you have, like, in our case, we played in St. Pete. And so we go to this small little conference room around this table, and there's 8 teams represented. And so here I am. Next on my right is Coach Pitino, because we're playing Kentucky. And you start going around this little small table. There's Coach K with Duke. You had Judd Heacock from, was it Purdue?
Michigan State.
Michigan State, rather. You had Coach, PJ Clarissimo was there because Seton Hall was also in the same little subgroup. And so you're trying to act like official, but at the same time, you're still a sports fan. And inside, you're thinking, wow, this is a cool moment and something you'll never forget, knowing these guys are, the ones that you grow up and you admire and their abilities, and they're right there around this little room.
Yeah, let me say something real quick about Landers Ford, folks. If you're in the market for a new car, truck, or SUV, give them a call. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager. Also, Kenny Myers is out there. Y'all know him in the business for 41 years, CBHS alum. Look around the Mid-South. Landers' name is everywhere. That's because they're great to work with. Lots of opportunities to save big on cars, trucks, and SUVs. If you got to take your vehicle in for service, they will pick you up at your home or your office, provide round-trip transportation. They have 3 dedicated drivers and $500 off for SEC Sidelines audience members. They did not become the #1 Ford dealership in the Mid-South because they're lucky. They do it because they'll outwork everybody. Huge lot, Poplar and Houston Levy. They will deliver anywhere. LandersFordMemphis.com. Proud to be associated with people like them, and they're right down the street from another great sponsor we have, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. And folks, they got a half-off sale going on right now. Duckheads, Ariat, Pendleton, Schaefer. Holy cow, Duck Camp. Lots of good-looking stuff as they kind of changing from the winter's fashions to the spring. Tons of great-looking men's and women's boots, women's purses, dresses, luggage, Barber, Filson, Old South, STS. They've got it all at Hewlett and Dunn, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And great folks like, Matei's Garage, Tom Martin's Body Shop. My sister's taking her car in there Monday because she smashed the side of it. Pay attention, Elizabeth. But at GE Patterson and BB King, I want to thank all of our sponsors and all of our people that watch this show, and my incredible executive producer, Brenden Martin. Vince, you have been up since probably 4 o'clock in the morning, my time. You do a great show, 5 to 8, our time, 6 to 9, your time. Johnny, you've interviewed more Heisman Trophy winners than anybody in America, over 14,000 interviews. Brenden has heard and seen it all. I think the coolest thing I heard today, though, is what Johnny just said, too, about you're out there among all these coaches, but you're still a fan. You're still that kid inside. Who was it? Was it Pitino the other day that, out of respect to Lou Carnesecca, he wore the sweater? What is it, Vince, about the Italian basketball coaches from the Bronx in New York? They're the best coaches in America. I've never seen anything. When you go back to the Big East, when Raleigh Massimino left Villanova and went to UNLV, I think that was kind of the beginning of a change in the Big East. But that's what the tournament really built its name on, was guys like Lou Carnesecca and Raleigh Massimino. That's just my opinion. Agree or disagree?
Because we're familia. What's the matter for you? we talk basketball at the dinner table with the pasta.
Well, but it's just it's addictive. I mean, it's so much fun to watch these games because these guys, their fans take on the love that they have. I love it.
Hey, Vince, if you had shoulder surgery, would you be able to talk? Because you got to use the hands. You got to raise them up. So if you were in a sling, how would you do that? Or, I mean,
don't wish that on me, man. I've avoided surgery to this point. But, yeah, we talk with our hands. That's for sure. But, yeah, I remember the Lou Carnesecas. You mentioned Raleigh Massimino. So many of them. You know, it's a obviously growing up with basketball in the Northeast, that certainly helps. But it's an emotion that you show because of you care, and Italians have a way of really showing that they care about you and how invested they are in their game. So and even a guy that wasn't Italian but certainly looked it, and I think was probably part of that Italian community, and Jay Wright, man, with Villanova. He had those tough basketball players like you were talking about, Rob, like as a Kai Ziegler type. But those Northeast Italian coaches, man, gems like no other.
Yeah,
and the funny thing about that too
makes the games fun.
Well, when the individuals from Italy came over to our country, 100 years ago, they weren't respected and stuff. And so now, I mean, if I was not American, my next on that list, I want to be Italian, honestly. But I love. Do you remember? I'm always curious about this. I always play the what if game in my head because I was at this game because the late Scoop Hudgens, and the reason why I still have Ballpark is because Scoop said nobody would remember the name Johnny Franks. The owner of the Nashville Sounds gave me Scoop Hudgens as my mentor, and he told me that.
Elmo Scoop Hudgens, yeah.
But you go back to '87. Alabama is playing in Birmingham with a trip to the Sweet 16 on the line. They blow out New Orleans, but the game before, remember the Dick Vitale, I will stand on my head if Austin Peay beats Illinois. They did it, and then Austin Peay had Rick Pitino in Providence down by 10 with 5 minutes to go. And all Austin Peay had to do with about 2 seconds, make one free throw. They didn't do it. They go into overtime and they lose. And then once again, at that point, Providence goes in. They beat Bama. They advance to the Final Four. I will always wonder, somebody like that can coach, but you wonder how that derails your coaching career if they had not won that game against Austin Peay. Would he have been, because all the other things that happened afterwards, would he have still ended up at Kentucky or Louisville? We don't know. If Austin Peay makes those free throws and Providence does not make that run, I was always curious to see what they would have done after that, where Pitino would have ended up.
Yeah, Vince, that is the cool what if. I was in Clarksville last Monday on the campus of Austin Peay, home of the Governors. So, I mean, I think this is a cool discussion. We'll wrap it up. But, God, you both of y'all's depth and your knowledge of the game. I mean, Vince, being part of the Vol Network, which is ginormous, and you do baseball with John Wilkerson. Just what a
start Friday.
Yeah, it starts Friday. Yeah, and this is so cool. And there's just nothing like the SIDs, the stat guys that do it. And they're the best guests on the show that we do because you've already written what you're talking about, and it's been committed to memory. So, Vince, let them know how they can follow you, and Johnny as well, and we'll get out of here. And most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Find ways to go out and help people. We're all blessed. You think you're having a bad day? No, make it a great day. Vince?
Yeah, appreciate it. Fortunate to be a part of the show. You do an awesome job, Rob. Appreciate it. Good to be on with you, Johnny, today as well. You can follow me on the socials, Vince Sports, on all the different social platforms. Our website, 991thesportsanimal.com, has podcast of John Wilkerson and I's morning show, Sports Talk, in its 36th year of existence. And then anywhere you can get it on the Vol Network, you'll see calls of myself and John Wilkerson will get started. It'll be streaming early in the year, and then radio after as we get closer to conference play. But Tennessee baseball getting started on Friday, so excited to be on with you as always.
Defending, oh my God,
national champion. Yeah,
you are the reigning. You're not defending. You are the national champion.
Reigning. Coaches don't want to hear the defending part.
Yes, it's
Vince,
reigning.
It's great to see you again, Vince, as well. Rob, I always love coming on your show. On the X/Twitter, you can keep up with me at BP Frank Show. On Facebook, you can keep up with me there. Johnny Ballpark Franks. Feel free to follow me. I've reduced my show load. I'm just do a weekly now, but it's the reason why we call it Where Legends Hang Out. For example, on Monday, I had Pro Football Hall of Famer Dwight Stevenson. Wow. I had College Football Hall of Famer EJ Jr., considered probably the best football player ever to come out of the high school ranks here in Nashville. You can follow me on Instagram at BP Frank Show as well.
Did EJ Jr. go to Hunter's Lane or
Maple? Oh, wait, now you threw me off. Maplewood. Yeah, Maplewood High School.
For executive producer Brenden Martin, who is absolutely incredible and one of the best people you'll know, thank you all for watching, and watch the Buddy Martin Show tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern on this channel, and check out our new show with AU Undercover, which is Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern with Ronnie Sanders and Doug Dean. Man, have a great day, everybody. We're out of here. Bye.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shoppe health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.